Everybody, it's Chris from SwipeGuide here. Thanks for tuning in to our very first edition of the series we're calling Explain It to Chris, where we talk to our own experts about their favorite features and functionalities in the SwipeGuide platform. Today, we're going to be talking with Molly Price, who is our continuous improvement lead and success manager, and she's going to be taking a deeper dive into the checklists feature in the SwipeGuide platform. So I'd love to start by just briefly explaining which feature functionality it is that you picked to talk about on this episode of Explain It to Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I am starting with one of our original functions in the system, which are checklists. It's my favorite. I think it's something that is somewhat underutilized, and I think it provides the most value for our customers.
And when you talk about a manufacturing checklist, what does that look like? What is a checklist in this context of manufacturing, the front line and the factory floor?
Great question. It can look like a lot of different things. Really depends on the industry you're in, how you're utilizing them. I've seen them from 5S checklists to sanitation to center lining. It can be utilized in a lot of different ways. It could also be utilized for something like training and, knowledge competency checks. So I think it really depends on what your use case is, which is another reason I think they're very valuable, is you can use them in a lot of flexible ways based on what your need is.
Fantastic. And what does a checklist look like in the SwipeGuide platform?
Yeah, I think it looks a lot like you would expect it to look on a piece of paper too, except you have the visual component. But I think one of the reasons SwipeGuide is much better than a piece of paper, for a multitude of reasons, is one, it's digital, so it's more easily accessible. Two, it's visual, so people have a very clear understanding of what they need to be assessing and reviewing. Three, that knowledge is captured and shared. You actually have it in the form of data analytics and results, and you can share feedback. That's not something that you can very easily do on a piece of paper that gets shoved into a binder and probably never looked at again.
The binder. We all know it.
The binder.
A lot of us love it. Can you tell me a little bit about who the checklist feature is for?
It's for everyone. You're an operator out on the floor, and part of your job responsibilities are to complete a checklist. You now can do this as easily as, using your phone or a tablet out on the floor to complete it. And it's very visual. It's clear what you need to do, and you can provide feedback and context based on your information. So that's it from the actual filling it out perspective. It's also for the production supervisors, the team leaders, and the managers. You now have direct visibility to, one, the work that has been completed by your team, but also the results. What's going on out on the floor? What happened during this shift? What information do we need to pass off, and what improvements do we need to make?
Can you tell me a little bit about how SwipeGuide checklists help users and supervisors do their jobs better?
Yeah, absolutely. From an operator perspective, using a piece of paper out on the line is not very user-friendly at a minimum. And you frequently see operators question, what's the benefit of this, because it's going to get stored away and maybe never looked at. There's also an opportunity to add context to what's going on. So within our checklist feature, you can add feedback in the form of written text as well as a photo or video. That's really helpful from not only a performance or training gap perspective, but giving context as to what's happening. If you are doing a sanitation checklist and you see a sanitation issue, you can immediately and very easily add context to what is going on, so that, for compliance purposes, for training purposes, for general visibility, hey, this wasn't clean, or this was a failure. We need to address this, which sometimes there's a communication link if you're relying on a piece of paper or a radio call to a supervisor to say, hey, we've got a problem. So that's it from an operator perspective. When I was actually a team leader, we had a very extensive shutdown that took 18 hours. We were working in an environment where there were allergens, and this was a multiple page checklist. And it took a lot of time. It was across shifts. Communication was really important because ultimately it was a safety issue if we did not complete this checklist correctly. So I think from a team leader perspective and a manager perspective, this checklist real-time feedback is incredibly valuable to understand what's going on, where we need to focus our attention to, one, ensure that we are, being compliant, as well as creating a safe environment for food production. But on the flip side, communicating to, other team leaders or managers, hey, we had a delay for XYZ reasons, and having that captured. And again, instead of just relying on word of mouth or something written on a piece of paper that can get lost, because it all comes down to dollars. If we have a delay, if we have downtime associated with a checklist that we're trying to complete, we need to be able to communicate what happened. And now we have the ability to do that much more easily.
So Molly, last but not least, can you talk to me a little bit about why you like the checklist features so much?
I definitely can. The reason I love checklists is for a multitude of reasons, but to keep it relatively simple, one, it makes everyone's lives easier to have this as a digital and visual tool. Two, you're finally getting feedback in a tangible way, whether that's written and visual feedback on a failure, or I'm now getting data analytics, because from a continuous improvement perspective, I don't have to go digging now for where my problems are. I have immediate visibility to where I need to look.
Thank you so very much, Molly, for explaining checklists to me and why they're fantastic for our users and for the frontline in general. And thank you, everybody, so much for watching. Make sure you go check out our brand new YouTube channel and give us a follow there and also on LinkedIn. And we'll see you very soon for some new videos. Thanks.